here for our July installment of Third Thursday. We're so happy you can make this month's Third Thursday as there are going to be no Third Thursday next month due to our August week-long training hosted by NTPTC. All that information for our week-long training will be posted at the end of this webinar. Today's presentation is going to be Fit for Purpose, Digital Tools for Emergency Response, which features Daniel Starostas, USA Consultant for Emergency Response Partnerships at Monday.com Foundation. The Monday.com Emergency Response team offers pro bono digital tools to support disaster needs, from donation management and volunteer coordination to site assessment and food distribution. Daniel will share how these tools can be adapted for Hawaii and Pacific Rim context to strengthen coordination, response, and recovery. We have 1 hour together today with about 40 to 45 minutes of presentation, followed by Q&A. Please list all your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to address them all. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Daniel. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. First, I guess I want to briefly introduce myself and then also the idea of fit for purpose technology on the whole. I'm from South Florida originally. I grew up on hurricanes, and that was sort of the general understanding that I was raised with on what normal things that were normal to me that weren't normal to basically anybody else. And I ended up working in tech before I went into humanitarian work. I worked in product design and marketing, and then over time moved squarely into disaster response, and now humanitarian innovation, which kind of like melds the two. And I was also part of the response team in Napili and Lahaina after the Maui fires, and so I was there on and off for almost 6 months. I ended up working with the Hawaii Pacific Advisory Group, some of whom are usually on this call, but Ted Ralston, James Palmolina, some of my favorite people. And so I've been involved on and off, and in a previous startup that I worked at that did post-disaster and off-grid connectivity. We worked with UH and a few different communities in Maui, Big Island, and Oahu on trying to better establish support mechanisms for internet and comms in at-risk areas, whether it was for childhood education or disaster response, and the mix of the two. And what I want to say first about fit for purpose technology is that one of my big gripes about how the humanitarian system currently exists is that there's a massive and very frustrating gap between what programs and organizations offer and what communities actually need. And bridging that gap for me is not just important, it's the hardest part, because a lot of the times you have set services, set projects you can only give sort of this version of your product or service. But then once you're on the ground and actually get to see what the situation is at the community level, at the household level, at the individual level, understanding what people actually need is very different from sort of like, the story that is told. And so for me, a lot of what fit for purpose technology is ended up being not just how do you tailor technology to a local need, how do you actually understand that need and build based on that rather than a much broader understanding of what technology can or should ostensibly do or accomplish for high risk or post-disaster communities. And I guess for instance, when I was in Lahaina, one of the communities or two of the communities that I was working with was the undocumented Micronesian and undocumented Latino folks. I was one of the only people on Maui Voa that spoke Spanish, and so I was working directly with them, basically to be a representative voice that wasn't being told, that wasn't being represented in the broader system. And so that for me is a great example of, if you're at the top, you only see from the top. If you're at the bottom, you only see from the bottom. How do we bridge the gap between if we had the technology for it, how do we bridge the gap between what organizations can do to actually represent the needs at the bottom? And so with that, I'm going to play a video first on what the Monday approach is. But for those of you who don't know, Monday.com is essentially a project management app platform, except that it can be used for basically anything. And they figured out a way to adapt that kind of project management to be a very emergency and disaster focused um, coordination tool. And so before I go into what it actually looks like, I am going to share my screen. And let's see, hopefully it lets me.
This is the story of how the Monday Emergency
Is
Response
the audio
Team
working?
helped relief organizations fight raging wildfires in Chile. On February 2024, a devastating series of wildfires hit the country once again. A combination of various factors caused a massive environmental and humanitarian disaster in the Valparaiso region, making it Chile's worst wildfire event of the century.
This is something I've never seen before. In a few days, thousands of families were affected by the flames, with more than 6,000 houses fully destroyed and 134 lives lost, with hundreds of missing people. I work at the Monday.com emergency response team, but I'm also a Chilean, and witnessing this devastation was heartbreaking for me.
So what did we do on the ground? We were able to support 7 major aid organizations to quickly and efficiently manage their response. We helped them manage volunteer registrations, food and aid donations, distributions, food bank management, support to small businesses in vulnerable communities, and much more, all through using the Monday.com platform. Organizations like the Salvation Army, Desafío Levantemos, ADRA Chile, Fundación Gastronomía Social, and Fundación Ronda were able to impact thousands of people in just a few days.
We have been working in Chile for the last 13 years. So it was almost a need to organize better our missions, our communication systems between our teams. With Monday, we can centralize the information, so analyze it to the whole team with one source.
To keep these efforts going strong, we brought into this mission some of our professional local partners, like Seidor, to keep the solutions working properly once we leave for our next mission. This collaboration is what's known as local approach, global strategy, local perspective, and it is proving to be impactful for the affected communities. The combination of the Monday.com emergency response team together with local channel partners allows 8 organizations to save resources, be more efficient, achieve more donations, and ultimately positively impact many more lives.
Thank you for listening. And before I get into the the little presentation that they have for it, one of the things that I wanted to say was that one of the reasons that I was drawn to how Monday runs their sort of coordination platform is that when I was working at Napili Noho in West Maui, that was one of the many resilience hubs on the island, and there was no real coordination, by virtue of the chaos of the post-fire situation. But figuring out how to coordinate amongst them ended up being a big tech lift. It wasn't just being able to call to understand who was doing what. And they ended up using, I believe it was Square in the end, to coordinate all the different donations and who was getting what across all the different resilience hubs, which worked great. But part of my job at Monday is to basically show all the different tools that are available. And for me, that includes Monday and it includes other tools. But being able to show what kind of coordination you can do on the platform such that you're not trying to build a platform during or after a disaster. You actually have something that you've been developing in Blue Sky so that you can implement it when something happens rather than try to reinvent something when you're not necessarily in a in the right place or the right situation to implement an entirely new technical platform. It's a place to manage all types of processes, donations, volunteers, tasks, and teams. I may end up skipping big chunks of this and just show you the actual application of it. But one of the things that I really like about it is that you can automate a lot of data collection and you can present it really nicely. And so when you're working with different communities, or if you're working with donors, being able to show the not just the work that you're doing, but the impact it's having. So for a little bit of context here is you can do inventory management, you can do needs assessment, you can do project management on depending on what you may be working on. And you can build it from scratch. We have several templates that I'll show you that you can build directly according to what you are trying to do, or what your situation may be. Even across the Hawaiian Islands, it's always going to be different. And so again, for me, fit for purpose technology is having a model, but also being able to build it from scratch according to what you actually need for your context and your community's context. And also, for what it's worth, the Monday ERT platform, which is the emergency response team platform, is totally free. It's like part of the corporation's foundation. That model is specifically to be free for organizations that respond to disasters. And also, in honesty, having seen different types of companies show up on WhatsApp groups or something like that, for a lot of people, it can be confusing when a company like Monday shows up on the disaster coordination call, and it may feel like they're selling something, or trying to profit off a disaster. And that's also one of the things that I want to make clear is that this is something to be working on long ahead of time, on a pro bono basis, specifically so that digital tools are more available and more readily implemented into all kinds of disaster training, preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery efforts. So this is how it works generally. This is how it's worked so far, which is one thing that I'm trying to change. So far, a disaster happens, and then in the following 1 to 10 weeks, Monday works directly with the organization that hopefully it already has a relationship with, to build, polish, and implement the type of system that you need for your specific response. Part of what I'm doing now is trying to talk to all kinds of different organizations. My responsibility is California, Hawaii, Florida, and Puerto Rico. So I'm reviewing, at this point, I think it's 170 different organizations, mapping out how they might benefit from digital response tools, and then working as best I can with them to build sort of a bare bones version that they can then build out further. So I'll show you how this looks like live. But one of the things that you can basically build whatever you want, which sounds a little too broad. But if you build a rapid assessment form for any, say, home that may have been affected or destroyed, you build your form, you fill it out, and then it automatically populates the board that you build to then be able to see what's going on in, again, your community, your city, whatever scale or scope you're looking at. You can set it by how critical it is. You can have all the documented information, and then you can also visualize it. One of the things for me was better understanding what was the demographic of the communities we were working in, regardless of where it might be. And knowing that every community and even every household is going to be slightly different, being able to account for discrepancies of household versus destroyed households. How many kids do we have to support? How many elderly do we have to support? Do we have to build an entirely different mechanism to support either kids or elderly, or folks that don't necessarily speak English? How do you account for different languages? So being able to track, rather than flattening a community into what is easiest to tend to, how do you embrace nuance and complexity to actually build that into exactly what you want to both present and ultimately tend to? So the Monday ERT platform is powered by the actual Monday corporate company. And so you have all the power that goes in through all that. You can do all the automations to set. I may just skip this. Yeah, I'm gonna skip this. Okay. They work all around the world. They deploy on a regular basis. And yeah, I'm just gonna show you the actual. So, also please interrupt me at any time if anything doesn't make sense, if you have questions, if you want to see different versions of it. This workspace at least. So here is the live rapid assessment template. You can go to mondayert.org, download all of these. And if you want to talk later on how this might affect or how this might be helpful for your organization, send me an email. I can give it to you, or Amy can put it in the chat. My goal is to work with as many organizations as possible in this context, and try to get you guys as best set for anything as I can. So as I was showing in the presentation, let's say here's your rapid assessment form. You can make this as long or as short as you need, whatever type of information you are trying to get, and you can build this from scratch. So here. Let me see if I'm able to. Here's the edit form. You can have this be truly, consider this a super powered Google form plus Excel plus project management that allows you to coordinate between all of them. So again, you can localize this to whatever you may be trying to find. So if you have any submissions on the rapid assessment form that then populates the main table, we're able to designate all the information based on the parameters that you're setting. And then you can also then see it on a map. If you have GPS markers or if you have addresses, you're able to see everything about how you're coordinating or what you may need to coordinate. And in this case, this may be a highly critical one. These may be lower importance. And then the dashboard can show you, you can customize and filter this information in 1,000 different ways. See if it shows. So depending on what you might be looking for, if you're a food distribution organization, if you're a whole community resilience, if you're if you're segmenting by ethnic enclaves, or if you're doing just health and medicine, or just elderly, you can filter all this information so that you have the most robust data set that you can also present very easily, not only to your team, but also to the community itself. One of the problems I faced many times doing humanitarian relief is that the communities feel like they are in the know about how their own information is being used. And being able to have a public-facing portal that shows exactly what organizations are doing, not only gives them a sense of empowerment and belonging, but also gives them a chance to have stronger input. Because ultimately, if you're on my end representing different organizations, for me, the experts of a community is the community itself, and being able to have that input from them to better understand how we can tweak our model, whether it's this organization or any other ones, for me is one of the most important things. And so you can see a few of the different options that you have. One of given that I was working at Napili Noho, we were doing food distribution. So here's the food donation management. So here, one of the various versions of what you can do is who are the vendors and restaurants that you are coordinating with? What are their type? Obviously, the contact information, but then also what is their status? How many orders can be supplied versus the availability orders? And again, we have templates for this, but this is for you to make as you may want. And again, you can set all the different parameters Here you can set it as what type of label you may have. And for me, actually, one of the important things here is here you see details of delivery person. So this is Mike. One of the things that is cool about Monday is that you can connect this food provider form to your volunteer form, which I'll go through in a second more. But if this is Mike, who's a new volunteer, I don't know who Mike is. You know what? I verified Mike because I was able to track all of his information. Mike is now an official verified volunteer, and it's not available here, but if you tag him here on what he can help with, you could put food delivery, which here's food prep, different versions of whatever it might be. I'm going to put food prep for this one. And then you can tag him on here on what he's doing. You can, if your request for aid is a basic food kit, you can have not the requester name, but who is the link to volunteers. This could be Mike. See? And you can automate all these things so that you know not only exactly who is doing the fulfillment of the aid request that you're providing, but also if Mike gets moved to if Mike is no longer volunteering, you can set it to automatically send a message that says, "Hey, NDPDC, Mike is no longer delivering. We need a new volunteer for restaurant A delivering to area X." So you can automate all those very quickly, and it allows you to have a more organic, holistic understanding of things as they move very quickly, which given a disaster context, as things are moving very quickly, you have to be able to roll with those punches in a way that is efficient. And one of the things I love about this is that the way that I remember doing Hurricane Maria response in Puerto Rico in 2017, my part at least was not very efficient. We were doing things on paper napkins, on Post-it notes, on random Excel sheets, and being able to coordinate all that into one place so that more people can see what you're doing, how you're doing it. There's accountability, there's efficiency. And so just to show you the dashboards for the food orders. So again, remembering, at least on my end, working in Maui, so much of it was figuring out was Hungry Heroes Hawaii was delivering what kind of food, what day, which restaurants were delivering, what families in Upcountry or in West Maui needed support, what churches were we working with, what food pantries were we working with, figuring out all the different moving parts allowed us to do it as quickly as possible, but there was no coordination system in place. There was just several organizations trying to work together. And so this works at both a micro and a macro level. You're able to do it just for your organization, but also this could work for Maui VOAD or Hawaii VOAD on the whole. So there's tons of different ways to cut it. And just to show you the level of depth, at least that I personally had been thinking about it. So how I basically practiced on Monday, given that I was thinking about every possible nuance that community might have. This is an organization I worked with in Puerto Rico that does roof rebuilding after hurricanes. And so I want to know the depth and breadth of every household that I work with. And so you can, this is, you'll see I have almost 30 different, something like that, categories. Let's see if it lets me go back. And my goal here is to embrace the reality and the complexity of a post-disaster community. So first, did they actually sign papers to allow us to begin reconstruction in any capacity? What was the difference between intake and start date? Because if you start too late after actually doing the intake, you're already losing time to the community, you're losing trust in the community, and then making sure that your finish date, your expected finish date actually works with that. What are the homes made out of? How many different I guess here there's just two, but different materials for roofs, getting your material list ready, having an address down. There are parts of Puerto Rico where addresses are suggestions, I guess, is the best way to explain it. And also legal names, government names versus names people go by are not always one-to-one. And so having the homeowner legal name would have been really helpful when I was looking for somebody who nobody knew how to recognize by name. And for the same reason, not everything has an address. So how do you have house description, a local landmark that might actually be able to help us find it? Is there cell service there? Are there projects nearby such that we can actually double up efforts and do 10 housing assessments in one area rather than do one housing assessment in 10 different areas? And being able to track every different variation of complexity and vulnerability. And just from a cost basis, what would the actual cost of rebuilding X part of the house be compared to what is the estimated FEMA payout? What is the estimated city support? All those moving parts, and being able to actually do the sort of automated math to have more information about each house, more information about each community, and more of the financial information that allows us to be most effective. And so with that, I'm going to take a quick pause and I'm going to stop sharing. Does anyone have any questions? So I have a non-Monday project that I'd like to show as well. But before I do that, I'd love to take any questions that folks may have. I can address Barbara's first. So the discussion about connecting communication and operations among NGOs is helpful. Does Monday also connect NGO organizations with federal and state agencies that are responding to disaster so response participants are able to coordinate efforts? Is Monday able to direct people to the site or other source of information with updates such as those you are showing to avoid having people and groups rush to the scene with donations that may or may not be needed? I hear you. The short answer is yes. The long answer is more complicated. Monday does not necessarily work with governments, at least not on the ERT is the fully pro bono arm. It's free. If it's the actual ERT, if it's the emergency response team build out, it's totally free. That's frankly, one of the great things about it. If there are variations of how Monday works, there's the ERT, which is totally free. There's the nonprofit plan, which is free to a point, but then at a certain level of, I think it's a number of users, it has to become paid at some point. And then there's the enterprise and discounted enterprise model that, let's say, a whole organization, if Team Rubicon as a whole wants to use Monday for everything, that's not going to be free. But if they want to use it exclusively for their emergency response work, like in the field kind of thing, then it is. Some of that is, I guess, negotiable depending on what the situation or what the kind of organization is. But the Monday generally tries to segment a little bit of what that looks like. And just Barbara, to your point, I just want to read this again to make sure. So the short answer is it depends. Monday can coordinate with NGOs and federal and state agencies. It depends on whether the NGO or the state agency is using the platform. You can have different users have like admin and edit rights on it. I think depending on who is using it, if it's so you don't have to be a 501c3 nonprofit to be part of the emergency response sort of like validation. You can be just a community organization. I know especially in after the Lahaina fires, there were dozens of informal community organizations that sprouted up. And so those are also totally valid under what we consider disaster response organizations. It's anybody who does response to a disaster, not organizations that are formally that. Monday.com as a corporation is a $15 billion company. That's how it gets paid. They committed to, I believe it's 10% of their global profits to social impact. And so there are several different projects, ERT included, that benefit from that subsidy essentially. And so yeah, the ERT is fully free for organizations that qualify. And as you saw um, in the original presentation, depending on whether we're doing it blue skies preparation or during mid or post disaster, it can be we work with you for a few weeks if we're doing blue sky, and then up to 10 weeks if we're doing post disaster, and then we transition back to you so that you have full control, full ownership over your whatever you built. If there's no other questions, I will move to my other project. But cool, lovely. Okay. Um, so. So before I was at Monday, I was with IOM. IOM is UN Migration. Anybody who is displaced within their own country is the purview of IOM. And I was on the shelter and settlements team, which was essentially trying to figure out if you are displaced from point A to point B, how can you validate that you were coming from, or that you are, who you say you are. Maybe you no longer have documents. Maybe you never had documents. Maybe those documents never existed. Maybe you live in an informal setting that doesn't have documentation. And so just to go back to fit for purpose technology, if you're coming from a very top-down approach where it's a very formal sort of like UN bureaucracy style approach that doesn't embrace the complexity of how communities actually function on the ground, it can be very difficult to get government validation to get resources. And there's some that happens in tons of contexts, including the US. If you're undocumented or you're living in an off-grid situation, or if you're unhoused, lots of variations that might mean that you don't have documentation. And so we wanted to find a way to recognize and validate unrecorded rights. So how do you build a platform that recognizes the importance and value of how you live and how you live in a place that isn't necessarily legal documents? And so what we built was so formal mechanisms for land claims, and the informal information to help bolster them has an enormous gap. When humanitarians lack context to validate needs and provide services, communities suffer. That is a global problem, frankly. It delays verification, it delays validation, it delays resources. I know that happened. Still, I don't know how much of the Lahaina community hasn't received funding that it was promised. In Puerto Rico, it took several years for a lot of communities just to get denied. And so being able to recognize land rights that may be ancestral, may be informal. I think Puerto Rico had a similar issue to Hawaii, where you had multi-generational families living on one plot, but all those plots were deeded to a single person. And so when FEMA came by and said, hey, where is John, who is on all the legal documents, the family said, well, John's been dead for 100 years. Well, then we can't give you any support because we need to see John because he's on the legal documents. And I think it was just shy of 100,000 people in Puerto Rico were basically denied support because they couldn't provide the person who was on the original deed, which is silly on its face, but ultimately that's simply how the system works. So how do you build fit for purpose technology that then recognizes and embraces that as part of how it works? And so this right now, the only reason I'm not gonna show more on this is because it's in pilot mode in the Philippines right now in an area that's tsunami risk. but it's still very much in pilot. The platform doesn't formally exist for use. If you go to landledger.org, which I'll put in the chat later, you can see a little bit more about it. But ultimately, what we built was an AI-powered platform that could take not just any legal documents, but voicemails, photos, text messages, anything you might have to prove not just your story, as it were, but how you got from point A to point B. What was the process? Who can vouch for you? Who are the people in your community that you might be connected to that we can then cross-reference to make sure that you are indeed a person who deserves this kind of support or that kind of support? Because these people who are related to you or are connected to you, we can assume that this circle includes you because we already have a more robust set of documentation around it that we can then connect because we have the AI capability to connect that set of documentation. So just to show how this approach at least worked, we worked directly with communities to understand what kind of information they might have, which is, again, not necessarily formal documentation. It could be anything that they might have access to. The big question for them was, how do you prove to anybody who asks that you live where you live? And for a lot of people, that was purchase receipts. They didn't necessarily have credit cards. So, how do you show cash purchases? How do you prove that your neighbor built your house? How do you build their tenure story to show who they are? How do you organize disparate data and then figure out how they actually connect? So for us, that was using AI and LLM models to connect all the different points and then have a more robust view of it, and then being able to customize all of it for aesthetic, evidence, language norms, and with the goal being that every single community that might use Land Ledger as a platform, it wouldn't say Land Ledger, it would say the equivalent of Maui Strong, or something that would represent them as a platform that they built for themselves, represents them on their own terms, and ultimately is able to catalog their existence in a more formal way that doesn't it neither invites federal, state, national folks to come look at what it is. All of it was it was anonymized as needed to the public, but usable if you had your own sort of token to access it. But beyond that, it was also making a point that those who could be at risk from having their information out there would also have their information full private. So I'm going to stop sharing on that one, and I will see. Thank you, Nancy. I will absolutely reach out. That's my presentation on Land Ledger. I'll put the two links in here, mondayert.org and landledger.org. So for me, I guess if there are any questions, please just jump in. But one of the reasons that I was really excited to present to Thursday was because having seen the type of coordination that, for one, an organization like NDPTC could do, that can coordinate across different communities. Right now, I'm talking to Vibrant Hawaii on the Big Island, and obviously a lot of smaller organizations in Maui and some of the VOED ones, just to figure out, should another major event happen, how are we organized this time? Are we able to prevent a lot of the inefficiencies or the big frustrations because we've actually considered how to connect our different efforts? There's so many food distribution, aid distribution, volunteer support, health support, making sure that all those actually connect and talk to each other has the potential to make a huge difference. I was incredibly impressed by how organized Maui was in a major sense, just because so many of the different organizations know each other on a personal level and have been working together for years. But at the same time, there wasn't a mechanism to allow them to do so, when the time came to actually need it. And so how do we allow more organizations to use more technology that works on their behalf in a way that, you know, caters to what they need on the ground rather than what different levels of government or different organizations on the mainland might say, we can fix you, we can provide something for you. How do we make sure that those who are affected are the architects of their own future and their own recovery? So with that, thank you for having me. Happy to answer any questions here. I'm also going to put my email here in the chat. Please feel free to reach out. Happy to talk about this anytime. And Amy, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much, Daniel. And for anybody who wants to chat, we will share this along with any of the resources that Daniel is willing to share, along as this recording will be posted on our YouTube. So don't scramble to save everything in the chat. We will share this. So we will have it. And one of the benefits of facilitating is I always get to ask my question first. I'll share it in the chat, but I know we touched on a little bit about like Starlink, this and that, but I was just wondering about ensuring the like data and the workflow, especially in a disaster area, especially just working with nonprofits. Just how are we able to just the connectivity in disaster affected areas and just
Sure.
The working offline feature, if you could touch just a little bit more on that.
Yeah, actually, let me share my screen real quick. I'm actively doing that in Texas. So perfect. But I also will answer your question, I promise.
No worries.
Okay, so just want to see chat. So officially, your question is, how does Monday ensure data integrity, workflow continuity when nonprofit teams are working in low connectivity or disaster affected environments? So a few different moving parts there. So first, data integrity on the whole, data security, privacy, all of that is at the highest level of international standards. Again, this is powered by Monday.com, the corporation. My team is super small, but the company itself is massive and publicly traded company, international. And so all those things for purely on like the data integrity and support side is supported on that side. Second, low connectivity and disaster affected environments. So a lot of this can be done offline. A lot of it is built to be done offline, such that you do it offline, and then when you're able to get to a internet access point, everything gets uploaded. And that's especially with the request forms. This also integrates directly with Kobo tools. If you know what that is, that's specifically an offline humanitarian form system, I guess, as it were, that we have a lot of direct, out of the way. We have a ton of integrations that, I don't know, right here. I think the Monday Marketplace maybe shows it. One of the things that's really good about Monday is that you can connect it to a billion other companies, services, integrations that you may already have. So, I mean, I don't know if this list is going to load, but you know, you can do. I'm just going to scroll through so you can see all the different versions of. A lot of these are just companies that exist already that provide sort of free third-party services that you can then use for whatever you're looking to do. So right now, one of the things that I was trying to figure out was part of rural Texas that my partner on the ground is working on. They have established I don't know if it's a 1-800 number, but it's a text line that there's a lot of folks in that part of Texas that don't have smartphones. They just have flip phones. So they're texting their needs to this number, hoping that that's how, you know, the organizations responding will be able to then respond to them. But there's no good way of tabulating that. And so right now what I'm working on is there a way to parse all those text messages to then populate one of these boards that then has and I use ChatGPT to figure that out. And we basically figured out that you're able to, if you could put a hashtag on your text to that number, not ChatGPT, the API from Monday can pull individual messages based on, say, it was you needed water for your community. All water hashtags then auto-populate into what here would be a water request. And if you did hashtag search and rescue, maybe the hashtag is rescue. This is search and rescue needs. And so figuring out ways to, that's like a low tech and semi offline version. But also this works directly, depending on the situation. They've taken Starlinks in. So this Texas organization that I'm working with is called Disaster Tech Lab. So they very specifically bring in tech to help the EOC get running, to help to build new EOCs very far out in like the more rural areas that may not have full connectivity. I mean, Heine, for instance, is not necessarily a rural area, but 19 of the 21 cell towers melted. And so how do you account for connectivity in a space where you can see the next resilience hub from Napili Bay, maybe, but you can't necessarily figure out who they're tending to or what they're doing. So that's like, again, semi-offline, and how do you coordinate for that? And so to that end, yeah, there's it integrates directly with Starlink work. If it's offline, then to online. There are some versions of it that can populate. I think if it's within like a certain closed circuit, that you can connect them. They won't necessarily talk to all the online ones, but if it's like a circuit of offline ones, I believe they can talk to each other to stay on that side. Cool. Sorry, Deborah Barbour, thank you for your comment. I will definitely reach out to you as well. And yeah, I just talked to Janice Ikeda at Vibrant Hawaii last week.
Okay,
Yeah,
any other questions? No, we still have about 9 minutes left. Any other thoughts or comments for Daniel?
If you have a Hawaii specific question that I can try to kind of brainstorm with this, like I said, when I was trying to figure out how to work through this, for me, I thought about what I would have wanted when I was working in Puerto Rico, and so I built the version of Monday that I would have wanted to support when I was doing very like bare bones, no tech version of it. And then having seen what it looked like in Maui, I was really impressed by the organization, but not necessarily seeing the tech side coordination. And so in trying to bridge all those things, I guess, again, like you guys are the experts on your respective community. And so the whole point for me here is I can build you, or you can download all the templates you want. But if you're not actually fit for purposing it to your purpose, you're not getting as much as you can out of it. And my goal is to make sure that it works for you. Or my cat who's falling asleep on my keyboard.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel. I think there's a lot of uses that we can get from around the world. So I really, really appreciate it, Daniel. Thank you so much. I think you're going to get a lot of people reaching out, and especially people who weren't able to attend. We're definitely going to share this widely with our SMEs and our broader audience. So appreciate you being
Appreciate
here and everyone else. I'm sorry, we did have a last minute question come in.
I did work with Archie Kalepa. I don't remember in what capacity, but he was so lovely. Had to kind of take over from at one point betters. I don't remember. I was working under Kaipo Kekona, who I think is literally Archie's cousin. If not actually, informally. But yeah, Archie was at Napili several times and I got to meet him a couple times. I don't remember what our overlap would have been. But Nancy, you and I can talk. We should talk.
Thank you.
Okay, as we mentioned before, there's unfortunately no third Thursday next month. Will have the week-long training in August. If you would like to join, we're going to share that information in the chat. Again, this chat will be shared, so don't worry about saving it. we will be sending it to everybody. You can feel free to share it with all of your contacts. And this recording and the presentation will also be shared and will be on our YouTube shortly within the next week. Thank you so much for coming, and enjoy the rest of your third Thursday. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us and presenting.
Mahalo, everybody.
Mahalo.